This is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Today I have another exciting episode for you. What we're going to do today is juice in the Omega Vert 330 HD juicer. The Omega Vert 330 is equivalent to the Omega Vert 350, which is also known as the Omega Vert 350 HD. The HD stands for heavy duty, and the heavy duty is the screen. It's an 8 times harder screen that comes with the HD units. So what we're going to do today is we're going to juice a variety of vegetables and also fruits in the Omega Vert. Now this video is specifically made for a customer that I had that said, hey John, I'm juicing in the Verts and it's not working that well. It's kind of like backing up, I can't get the top off sometimes, it doesn't come off easily, and it's just not really working too well. So I said, hey, why don't you email me what you juice and I'll try to approximate what you're juicing and I'll juice in it and show you my specific techniques to get the most out of the Omega Vert. Now I already have a few videos like this. One is entitled Omega Vert Best Practices, so if you haven't seen that video already, please be sure to check that video where this happened to another customer and I made a video like this, and after she did what I mentioned in the video, she loved her juicer. So the Omega Vert juicer is like, a finicky juicer. It's like that girlfriend or boyfriend you may have that likes things a certain way, and if you don't do things a certain way, they kind of get upset a little bit. Well, the Omega Vert juicer won't ever get upset at you, but it will actually not work too well, make a really pulpy juice, and kind of clog up and not work the best for you. So you need to kind of finesse it like you need to finesse your significant other, so that it works well for you. And that's what I'm going to show you in this video. It's just real simple, and there's only a few techniques you need to follow to get it to work right for you. So let me go ahead first and introduce what I'm going to be juicing today. Number one, I'm going to be juicing some dandelion greens. So yes, these are dandelion greens that look like they may be coming out of your front lawn. Actually, these are out of my backyard. So these are real dandelion greens that have been growing. They may not be as large as some of the ones in the store, but the ones that you do buy in the store are actually not dandelion greens. They're actually chicory. Chicory is closely related to dandelion, and they look very similar, but that's usually what's sold in the store as dandelion, even though it is chicory. If you want the true dandelion, go out to your front lawn and pick yourself, or better yet, grow some in rich compost and rock dust to have the best dandelions ever. So we're going to juice a small little bunch of dandelions. In addition, I've also picked from my garden some Italian parsley and regular parsley. Besides just being that condiment on your plate, when you go out to a restaurant that's good for your breath, it's actually very rich in chlorophyll and a really good food to be juicing. So we're going to be juicing a whole bunch of that. In addition, we got a whole bunch of cilantro. Cilantro is really good, they say, for detoxification, so I like that a lot. Besides the leafy greens, we have some ginger. So ginger will add a nice bite to your juice. This is about a 1-inch piece of ginger. In addition, we have some celery. So we have a whole little mini head of celery here that we're going to juice. Next, we have 2 cucumbers, or about 1 regular sized cucumber. I happen to get these pickling cucumbers at the farmer's market. Now, I want to stop here for a minute and talk about the produce quality. Some of these items I actually picked from my yard, some are actually from the produce market, and actually some are from my neighbor. Thank you, neighbor, for the lemons. But I want to encourage you guys to get the highest quality and freshest quality produce as possible. If you do have a garden, go out and pick stuff from your garden, then come inside and juice it immediately. Don't pick it from your garden, put it in your fridge, and then juice it. As produce gets older, it gets softer and spongier, and as it gets softer and spongier, guess what? It doesn't juice as well in the juicer. So it's definitely important when going to the supermarket, especially picking up things like the apples, which we're also going to be juicing. You need to get nice, hard, and firm apples. If you get soft and mushy and mealy apples, it's not going to juice well, and that can be challenging depending on the time of year. Right now, we're in between apple seasons. Most of the apples you're buying are actually been in cold storage from last year. So one easy way to tell, but don't tell the produce guy you're doing this, is you want to take your thumb and press on the apple. If you could press in with your thumb on the apple, and I'm actually pressing in on this with my thumb on this apple, I think this is a Fuji, it's not too good. On this Cameo apple, it doesn't dent quite as easy. And that being said, don't dent all the apples in the store, it's actually really rude, just try it once. But nonetheless, in general, Granny Smith apples tend to juice better than others. They keep their hard and firm consistency better, and it's going to be better to juice, although that's not one of the sweetest apples. So keep that in mind. In addition, we're going to juice some lemons that I talked about. If you're going to juice lemons, yes, you can juice the rind, skin, and all, if you do juice lemons, I would encourage you to get the most ripe lemons you can. So you can see these are nice, vibrant yellow. In addition, these lemons are called Meyer lemons. Meyer lemons are generally sweeter than standard lemons, and Meyer lemons are a kind of lemon like the Fuji apple versus the Red Delicious. Most lemons are just sold as lemons, and Meyer lemons can be pretty rare. In California, they're pretty abundant. So I'm glad to be juicing some Meyer lemons today. So that's the produce we're going to be juicing. And besides securing your produce, the next thing that is very critical when juicing the Omega Vert is to prepare your produce properly. Actually, almost everything that I'm going to be juicing today needs to be prepared properly. Say that 5 times. Prepare your produce properly. Prepare your produce properly. Prepare your produce properly. So we need to prepare the produce properly. And remember that tongue twister, and you'll remember every time you juice in the vert that you need to do it every single time. So the one thing that will help you to do this is, number one, either a large cutting board, so like as large as you could find, or get 2 smaller ones. I find that if you have large cutting boards, then it's going to be easier to prepare the produce properly by cutting it up and then leaving piles of each produce item in different areas of the cutting board. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to prepare each of the produce items, and I'll tell you what I'm doing and how I'm doing it as I go. So we're going to move some of this produce out of the way, and we're just going to focus on this front board here. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to actually take these dandelions, and we need to cut these up. The problem that arises in the Omega Vert is that as the pulp is coming out, there's a little pulp flap. It's a yellow pulp flap. This keeps the pulp inside the machine so that the auger in there could grind up and literally squeeze all the juice out of the items that you're putting in there. The problem arises because there is a pulp flap. Things that have long, stringy fibers, actually probably the optimal example is the celery. You ever eat celery and you get these long, stringy fibers stuck in your teeth? Well, these are the same fibers that are going to get stuck in the juicer, and when that happens, then the juicer gets backed up, and when it gets backed up, the juice is pulpier, number 1. Number 2, it doesn't yield as much. And number 3, sometimes your top will actually be hard to come off because all the pulp will be stuck inside the machine. So it's very important, whether you're juicing celery or any other leafy green for that matter, to cut it up. Even in dandelion greens, there will be some strings that can clog up the machine. So what we're going to do is we're going to just basically stack these up. I'm going to take the knife and cut it into nice, like literally 1/8-inch small sections. So I have a nice ceramic knife here. Cuts really nice and easy. We're just going to chop these up once again, 1/8 inch. I mean, I'm talking like that thin. You know, the smaller the better. In some prior videos I did say you could chop it up into like 1 or 2-inch sections. I have learned that, you know, that's not as efficient as chopping it smaller. The smaller you chop it, the better it's going to work. And I want you guys to have the best results when juicing in the Omega Vert. You know, I don't want to get another email, although it will happen. John, the Vert doesn't work well for me, and then they gotta, you know, I gotta send them to this video to watch it so that they know how to do everything properly. So once again, you know, just like any new appliance, how to program your VCR or anything, you know, use your iTouch or your iPod. There's always something you're going to need to learn how to do. And, you know, using the Vert, this is just part of it. So you can see here I got all the dandelion chopped up. Next, why don't we go ahead for the cilantro. Once again, cilantro has stalks. The stalks can get stuck up in the machine. We're going to go ahead and chop this stuff up too. We're going to line up all the ends and cut it every 1/8 of an inch. This is really simple and really easy. It'll take you an extra few minutes to do this so that you can get the best results out of your Omega Vert juicer. And if cutting up produce is too much work for you, you may want to look for a different juicer that you don't need to prepare the produce as much. Most juicers will require some level of produce preparation, although, you know, this is a little bit more than other juicers. But I kind of find this a whole meditative process. You know, I mean, I go out to my garden, pick the produce, and I'll come in here and prepare it. And it's just all part of the process. So let's see here. We pretty much got all this cut up. Try not to leave any pieces uncut. So now that's our little pile of cilantro right there, sometimes called coriander. Technically, coriander is the seed pods that are formed on the cilantro plant. So that's that. Next, we got the parsley, Italian parsley. Once again, guess what we got to do? We got to cut it up. So we're going to go ahead and bunch this up, and we're going to start cutting. Now the stalks on the parsley are a little bit thicker than on the cilantro, so we got to ensure that we cut it nicely so that it won't clog up the machine. Because if you miss even one little stalk, that one little stalk that gets stuck could be the one that kind of messes you up. So I want to make sure that you do this, properly, and your juicer doesn't get stuck up on you. I don't like stuck up juicers, just like I don't like stuck up girls. In any case, let me go ahead and continue to do this, and we'll come back at you once I got all the parsley chopped up. Alright, got the last few chops there and got that parsley chopped up. And what I like to do is I like to put in each produce item into its own pile on the cutting board. So you can see here I got a little pile of dandelions, I got a pile of cilantro, and now I got a pile of parsley. Next, we need to make a few more piles. Next, why don't we go ahead and do the ginger. The ginger's nice and small. And what you're going to see is that the ginger is also very fibrous. We could pull some fibers off here, and literally it'll probably just, like run down and just come off in one fall swoop. You can see the fibers kind of sticking up there. We also need to cut this up really well. So you don't want to cut it long ways with the fiber. You want to cut it against the fiber. So in this case, we're going to cut it right down. And once again, we're going to cut it into small little sections. Once again, 1/8 inch sections, so that it's going to juice the best in the Omega Vert juicer. Also, obviously when using any cutting appliance like a knife, you want to ensure you don't cut your fingers. So take your time while preparing any produce that you're preparing for the Omega Vert. So now we have a little pile of the ginger. Next, let's see, we're going to go ahead and process the cucumbers. Cucumbers are easy, you don't got to dice those up. What I like to do is I like to just cut them in half again, and now we have some quarters here. And sometimes I'll even take the quarters, depending on how long the cucumbers are, and slice that again in half. So these are the size of the cucumbers. The cucumbers won't generally clog the machine up. I want to stop for a second too and talk about some of the items, and the consistency of the items that we're juicing. So, when you are juicing, there's going to be a few different kinds of items you'll be juicing. One of them can be like leafy greens. So any leafy greens is one category of, produce you will be juicing. Another category could be hard root vegetables. So things like carrots and beets are hard root vegetables. In general, you always want to put something like with a leafy green and then juice that, and then a hard root vegetable afterwards. Unfortunately, we don't really have any hard root vegetables, so we're going to try to fill in and make it work with some other vegetables that are firm. So some other firm vegetables that would be considered firm vegetables, in my opinion, would be something like the celery. And depending on your cucumber, I would maybe consider that semi-firm vegetable that may also help feed through and push through the leafy greens. In addition, you have the fruits. So fruits like apples and lemons are generally fairly soft, and they do also need one of those pusher vegetables like the celery, maybe cucumber, or better yet, the root vegetables, carrots, to be juiced optimally. So one of the things we could do is modify this recipe a little bit by adding just a few carrots in there. Carrots are very high in beta-carotene and other antioxidants. If you are going to juice carrots, let me go ahead and grab this one here. I would encourage you guys to juice something like this. Yes, this is a yellow carrot that is picked fresh from my garden today. I would encourage you to juice heirloom carrots. They tend to be less sweet and not have as much sugar. That being said, people are scared like, oh, John, I can't juice carrots, it's so high in sugar. Well, let me tell you, I'd rather drink fresh carrot juice than a soda any day of the week. Even fresh carrot juice over something like orange juice that many people drink without thinking every single day. The carrots have such a nice, dark, rich orange pigment. And in addition, they taste really good when added to the juice. So, I wouldn't say exclude carrots from your diet. Actually, I don't want you to exclude any food from your diet, because every food on the planet has a different set of nutrients that are really good and our body may need. So why, limit yourself by limiting what you're eating. And we might even juice this carrot in a little bit. So yeah, so very important to do the rotation and juice things in proper order. Next we're going to go ahead and cut up this cucumber. Once again, we'll just cut it into quarters and then cut it in half. Very simple, very easy. Lemons, really simple. Once again, we're just going to cut it in half and then cut it in half again. Have little sections or little wedges. As long as the lemons are cut to fit down the feed chute, you're good to go. This larger lemon we might have to cut a little bit smaller, maybe into 6, because it is a little bit larger and it may not fit down the entire feed chute. So we got that thing cut. The apples, once again, as long as the apples will fit down the feed chute, no need to dice those up. So I like to usually cut off one side. You have a section here, we'll cut this in half, and then kind of like do the tic-tac-toe cut. Do like cut off the sides of the apple and then have like the center core area. Now I want to take a second and say yes, you can juice the center core. You know, sometimes I look for the mold on the bottom. If there's mold on the bottom, I'll cut it out. And you know, some people are concerned about juicing the seeds. The seeds do contain a small level of cyanide. If you probably ate straight apple seeds, you know, in pounds worth, it probably wouldn't be too good. But I don't see a problem for me personally juicing, you know, a few apples here and there. Of course, if you are concerned, please contact your medical provider that can give you further assistance. I'm telling you what I do, and just because I do it doesn't mean you should do it. But I've juiced lots of apple seeds and I'm still here. In addition, based on my research, apple seeds contain things like B17, which is known as Laetrile, which some people say may be helpful with cancer. So that's pretty interesting. So we got the one apple cut up. Once again, we're going to go ahead and cut that second apple. Cut off that piece, cut that in half. There we go. Now we're going to do the tic-tac-toe thing. Cut this right down and cut this into some pieces that'll feed in the machine. So there you go. That's all the apples cut up. Now you can see here we got nice little piles, all the greens, the ginger, the cucumbers, and apples. And so next, let's go ahead and cut the celery. And the celery is probably the #1 thing that will jam your juicer up faster than anything else. So when cutting celery, make sure you cut it into like nice 1/8-inch pieces. So we're going to take basically one whole cutting board to itself and carefully cut this celery up into small pieces. One cut at a time. Now if you don't like using knives and cutting things up, I do find that a food processor with the slicing blade, the small slicing blade, you could basically feed all the produce into there, and that actually will do a fairly good job of chopping up something like celery. Although, you know, on leafy greens, it might not do too good of a job. I prefer just to keep it simple and just take the knife out, take your time and cut some of this stuff up. It's therapeutic, and actually, you know, when you're chopping up vegetables and fruits, you know, you are actually getting back to nature. I'd encourage you to get out to nature and grow a garden and actually go hiking and whatnot. But, you know, dealing with natural foods is just natural. I mean, this is how we would all eat, you know, hundreds of years ago. And nowadays there's all these other things like ho-hos, ding-dongs, and Twinkies that are, in my opinion, not even real foodstuffs that people are shoving down their pie hole every single day. It's definitely also good to be connected with your food. So, you know, I always encourage you to purchase your food at local farmers markets or even grow it yourself so that you become more connected with your food and know where it comes from. Because in our society as well, you know, people are just not connected with the food they eat anymore. They have no idea who grew it or where it came from. I'm happy to say like half of the food that I'm juicing today, I do know where it came from. And I know the farmers and I've met them personally. And that's something that's really important to me. So I think I got all this stuff cut up. And you know, what I'd like to say about preparing your produce is that I want you guys to be set up for success. Actually, that's a term they use at one of my last jobs that I had. The manager on the prior shift would have to set the new manager up coming in on the later shift, set up them for success, have everything stocked and ready to go for the next shift. And that's what I want you guys to do every time you juice. Set yourself up for success. If you don't prepare your produce properly, you're setting yourself up for failure. So real simple, real easy. I chop this stuff up. I enjoy chopping. And now we get into the juicing. So we're going to go ahead and turn the machine on. And it's running. And the first thing you're going to always do is you're going to feed in some leafy greens. After you feed in the leafy greens, then you're going to want to feed in a hard root vegetable. You're always going to want to follow everything on here with a hard root vegetable. If you're not juicing hard root vegetables, then you want to juice something that has a nice firm consistency. So the best thing we got is something like the celery. So we're going to put a handful of celery in there. The other thing you're going to do is you're going to pay attention to that outlet right here as the pulp is coming out. You always want to make sure there's a continuous flow. Whether it's a nice wide fat flow or whether it's a partial thin flow, the main thing to look for is that there is a flow. And after you feed the produce in, you don't want to just all of a sudden take another thing and throw it in and another thing, throw it in. You want to give some time for the juicer to work, because what happens is inside the cavity of the juicer there's the auger and it's spinning around and there's produce in there, and you want that to come out before you start backing it up with more stuff. It's like if you have your mouth full and you're trying to shove more stuff in your mouth and eat, it's not going to work too well. So you can't feed things in too quickly into the Omega Vert either. Next, it looks like that fed out pretty good. We're going to drop in a lemon, see how that works. Next, we're going to take some more leafy greens, a nice handful here. This is the parsley going right in. After the parsley, once again, we want to put something in that's nice and hard. Once again, we're going to use a handful of celery there. So after that celery came out, now we're going to do a piece of the cucumber here. Just a quarter piece of the cucumber, drop that in. Then I think we'll follow that by an apple. Now once again, we're going to put another handful of celery. Now it's very important to dull the produce out you're juicing like one handful at a time. Like if you see you're getting low on celery, then you probably better feed in more leafy greens before you have leafy greens, at the end, and you don't have anything to put in behind it that's going to help push it through the machine. So after we put in those leafy greens, I think we're going to go ahead and try an apple afterwards. And as you can see, we still got some flowage and stuff coming out of the machine, so that's definitely good. We're going to give it a second here to catch up with what we're juicing. Next, let's go for a piece of apple, followed by some more cilantro. Right after the cilantro, guess what? We need to do something nice and hard, so we're going to go ahead and put a nice handful of cucumbers that are going to give it the juicer some fiber to help push it through. It's like if you ate meat all day, you wouldn't have enough fiber and you would get constipated. So don't let your juicer get constipated on you. Continually feed things in like the hard root vegetables or hard fibrous produce items such as the celery. But don't forget, you got to continue to juice all your other stuff too. Let's go ahead and dump a piece of cucumber in there and dump another lemon in there. Once again, we're going to go ahead and let this work and let the machine start spitting out some more pulp before we feed stuff in. If we continually just fed stuff in as fast as we could shovel it in there, then that'll cause the machine to back up, and that's not too good. So another thing I like to do is, have you ever done the corn test when you actually eat corn and then the next day or maybe 2 days later you see corn come out the other end? You know what I'm saying? If you look in the toilet bowl after you're done eating, you can see it come through. You could also do the beet test where you shred beets up and eat shredded beets to check your transit time and how long it takes for food to go through one end and come out the other. I also like to watch the transit time on the vert, like, okay, I'm going to put this in now and let me see if I can tell when this stuff's now coming out. So let's go ahead and put it in. We put a whole bunch of parsley in here and we put it in and I don't see it coming out yet. I don't see it coming out yet. Oh, there it is. I finally see it coming out. So once you start seeing whatever you just put in come out, then it's a good time to put in some more stuff. So once again, after we put in the parsley, another handful of the celery, and you can hear the machine work, literally grind up and squeeze out all that nutrition in the celery in your juice collection cup over here. Now I am using a nice glass Pyrex measuring cup today to have my juice flow into. Another thing you may be noticing is that we are getting a little bit of foam. All juicers will produce some level of foam. The Omega Vert juicer will tend to produce more foam the more leafy greens you feed in without like a carrot behind it. So if you juice straight leafy greens, it'll make a lot of foam. If you juice like some leafy greens like this and then a carrot right after it, then it's going to make less. The problem is the auger, as it's grinding up, is also, including some air with the juice. But if you include a carrot, that takes up some of that air space, so that will not be made with the juicer. So you can see we just put some more greens, followed by some celery, and now we're going to go ahead and put an apple in. And I'm also checking the transit time. So, I mean, when you're juicing the vert, you need to be really good at multitasking. I'm kind of watching this, kind of checking out what I got left and what I got to feed in next. Got to keep track of that. And I got to make sure my pitchers aren't overflowing yet either. Oh man, we've been forgetting about the ginger here. So you know the ginger, you want to zam! Put a little bit of whatever else in and then put a little piece of ginger. You don't want to just feed all the ginger at once. So once again, we put some leafy greens. We're going to follow that by some celery. I mean, probably the main thing to remember is that you need to really properly prepare the produce. I mean, that's where most of the time should be spent, to cut up everything so that it's going to juice optimally. And now it's as simple as just rotating all the different items as I'm juicing. Just a handful of this, a handful of that, right in the machine. Real simple, real easy. You know, with these steps and by taking your time, which is really important, this is a slow juicer, people. You want a fast juicer, get something like a Breville that's going to blast through your produce but not be very effective at leafy greens, and also add a lot more air into your juice. And if you do run out of something, it's always best to run out of your leafy greens first, because the juicer will actually handle something like cucumbers for the most part straight, or nice hard firm apples straight. I would tend to juice some of the lemons first because the lemons tend to get backed up in the machine. But it's always good to end up with the hard vegetables. So if you have leftover carrots or apples or cucumbers at the end and you're out of all the other things, that's actually a good thing to have. So let's see, go ahead and put some more celery in there and check it out. We still got a flow coming out. We probably got about 2/3 of the flow. So if the whole outlet port's that big, I got about 2/3 of it still ejecting. So that's definitely a good thing to know. If you get down to like, you know, 1/3 coming out, then it's kind of getting clogged up a little bit too much, and maybe you didn't prepare things properly, or you aren't feeding things in a good order. So every time you guys juice in the Omega Vert, I want you to become better at it. I mean, I've been juicing in this machine for many years now. As long as they've been available, I've been juicing these, and every time I juice, I get a little bit better at juicing in it. So hopefully you too will actually learn and be a creature of learning. So I mean, once you had to learn to get up and walk after your baby and your crawl, and maybe the first few times you fell down, but slowly but surely you got your balance and you knew how to walk. So same thing with the juicer. You're going to slowly and every time learn, like, oh, well, last time I did this, it backed up. Let me try cutting things up smaller, doing things a little bit differently, feeding things in a different ordering, and maybe it's going to work better for me. So, yeah, I mean, this is working real good. I think I'm actually going to run out of pitcher space before anything else here. Let's go ahead and feed some of those pieces of ginger in and some more of those delicious leafy greens. Now, I definitely want to encourage you guys to juice your leafy greens, leafy green vegetables, including some of the ones I did today, the dandelion, parsley, and cilantro, are some of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. Leafy greens can contain up to 50% of protein by calories, so they're very protein-rich. They also contain things like chlorophyll that they say is very detoxifying and really good for us. It looks like my collection cut's pretty full there. We're going to go ahead and switch this one out and put a new one in there. I mean, that much produce has already made 2 cups of juice. I'm going to go ahead and try it here real quick. Wow, that's a lot of ginger in there. A little bit of ginger goes a long way. I use about a 1-inch nub. You may want to use a little bit less in your juice unless you really like the taste of ginger. Let's go ahead and throw the rest of that ginger in there and juice the rest of this stuff up. What we're going to do next is I'm probably just going to end up feeding the rest of the produce in the Omega Vert juicer, and at the end I'm going to go ahead and open the machine up and show you guys what it looks like on the inside. That's a telltale sign on how you are juicing, so it's definitely good feedback for you. You know, the more residue on the inside of the machine, the worse you did. The less residue, the better you did. So I'll juice this and be right back at you. I'm just about done. I have a last handful of the celery here. So I'm going to go ahead and sweep that off my cutting board and pour it right in the vert. Once again, the last thing you want to do is something that's hard and firm, such as the root vegetables or the hard vegetables, the hardest vegetables you have, which in today's case was the celery. So once you're done running the machine, you're going to want to let it work a little bit after you put in that last handful. You can see the pulp is still being ejected. It's ejecting out actually the hard celery right here. And this stuff's actually fairly dry. That's another reason why I like the Omega Vert. It tends to make a little bit better yield on many items compared to other single auger style machines. So once the pulp stops a-flowing and the juice stops a-flowing, it's a time to turn off the machine. So what I am noticing too, we did let this run a little bit. The motor body housing does get a little bit warm. So it is recommended that you don't really run your juicer longer than a half hour or an hour at the most. If you're going to take longer than that, you might want to juice in different, stages. Although, I do know at trade shows they run these like continuously for hours on end. But that being said, it's definitely best for the long-term durability. Just, let your juicer have a breather. Because if you're trying to run for an hour straight, you might be worn out unless you're a runner. Now let's go ahead and take this guy apart. So we're just going to go ahead and turn off the top. And one of the things you want to look for is that there's not a whole lot of residual pulp inside the machine, which I'm not seeing. If you pull out your auger, a good telltale sign is if your auger is fairly clean. You can see here this auger I just pulled out. I mean, there's not a whole lot of pulp on it. Yeah, we got a few things in there. But what you're going to see if you didn't do a good job is like in the bottom here, it's just going to be lined with pulp, especially inside this little ring here, this little inset ring. It'll be full of pulp. In addition, another good indicator is to look inside your screen. The screen should have a little bit of pulp residue in there, but not a lot. This will also make cleanup easier if you're using it properly, because then there's not going to be a lot of wastage inside the machine. Last, let's go ahead and take off the juicing bowl. Once again, your juicing bowl shouldn't have a whole lot of residual pulp or juice in it, although it may have some juice. And then I'll go ahead and tip that over the juice collection cup to get all the juice out. And the hardest part to clean in the juicing bowl is this area right here where there's the residual pulp. I like to take the little cleaning brush that they give you. This cleaning brush is very important to clean the juicing screen. And you want to make sure you get all the pulp dislodged out of the holes in the juicing screen, because over time that can build up and then that'll reduce your yield over time. So that's very important. Also, if your juicing parts do get stuck up with pulp and discolored from all the juicing you're doing, you can soak it in a solution of either Cascade automatic dish detergent or OxyClean and hot water and overnight, and then in the next day you're going to scrub all the parts clean and it's going to dislodge all the stuff. So on this here, what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and take the screwdriver end of this tool and just put it in there, and you're going to basically just dig out all the pulp that I like to then put into the pulp collection cup. Now this pulp collection cup, all the pulp in here is excellent for use in worm composting or just composting in your yard. Some people like to eat it, save it, make carrot cakes or other things out of it if you did juice carrots. I like to just personally compost it. Another thing I will do is actually I'll feed it to the dogs. I'll mix it in with some of their dog food. And this is just extra fiber for them, and it's really good. Next I'll go ahead and pull out this yellow pulp flap and kind of dig in here with the screwdriver end and dislodge more of this pulp. Now this is the hardest part to clean on the Omega Vert. Once I do get it fairly dislodged of most of the pulp, I'll then basically run it under the sink and just blast some hot water through there, and that usually cleans up the rest of it. So that's how easy it is to juice in the Omega Vert 330. These things that I juiced today, number one key is get a good knife, 2 large cutting boards, and chop up everything finely. If you do that, you're probably going to get good results. Number 2, make sure you feed things in properly. The third step, don't forget, is to slow down. Even though you cut up everything properly and you're feeding things in the right order, don't just start blasting stuff through there, because it's going to back up. You see the slow and moderate pace that I did, and things worked perfectly for me. So because I did it perfectly, I know you can do it perfectly too in the Omega Vert Juicer. And I want to encourage you guys that each time you juice in the Vert Juicer, try to improve what you did from the previous time. Maybe you're going to have to cut things smaller. Maybe you're going to have to slow down a little bit. Maybe you're going to have to rotate in things. Maybe you're going to add a carrot or two to help push things through the machine so that you're going to get the best results ever in the Omega Vert Juicer. I firmly believe that the Omega Vert Juicer is one of the best juicers on the market. It's the one actually I use the most in my kitchen, but I do have other juicers that I also use. So if that tells you anything, that's saying a lot, because I have basically all the different juicers that I could select from any day of the week to use. And I choose this one because I like it the most. when used properly. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this episode learning how to juice these particular items in the Omega Vert Juicer. I've had a lot of fun sharing with you guys, and hopefully you guys can now do it too. Once again, my name is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Be sure to visit DiscountJuicers.com/YouTube for special promotional offers for our YouTube visitors.